I made these awesome floating LED shelves last year, but I need another one, and I want to try a stronger design.
Oh, that is stout.
And twice the LEDs. I'm going to be using some maple solid wood, and this thing is huge. It's 2 inches or 8/4 if you're fancy. But don't worry, if you want to make one and you don't have machinery to deal with rough lumber, you can just go grab a 2x12 and you can make one just out of this. What we are going to have to figure out though is how to get all the electronics in there, but we'll deal with that later. All right, so the original board was not quite long enough, so I milled it all down. This was the original size, and then I had to take the offcut and then rip it in half. And I did cut some little floating tenons in the end, aka dominoes, or if you want to use a really cheap version, I got a video up here that can show you a replacement for a domino. But I'm going to put these all together, and it's going to be a little crazy. I'm going to have to clamp these down to the sides, because what good is a glue up if there's not a big chance for failure? Let's see what we can do. After the shelf was all dry, I took it out of the clamps and knocked down the glue, and then I planed it flat and then took it through the joiner, the table saw, all that goodness just to get it down to this nice looking little piece here. Now this is not going to be the final shape. We're still very blocky here on the end, and to make it look nice and sleek, I'm going to put some chamfers on here, but I'm going to wait to do that later, because right now what I need to do is figure out how I'm going to drill into the back and clear out some space for the LEDs. So let me show you the LEDs and the setup that I want to do here. Now there are a ton of different LEDs out there because LED lights are like crack for teenagers and YouTubers, because what good is a project without some LEDs? So here's the 3 types of LEDs, and these back 2 right here, these are actually RGB, will do all colors, and this first one is a special LED that only does white, but you can see on the back, you can just see how tiny these little strips are and how far apart they are. So these are about 2 inches apart, these are about 3/4 inch apart. I would definitely not recommend these back here, and this is what these look like. So even though they are RGB, when you go to the white, it's got a very blue tint to it, so they just don't look nice. Now this one in the middle, this is the one I've used on a lot of projects before. You can see the difference between the whiteness of these strips. This is a much nicer white. Also, it does do red, green, and the blue, but it can also do other cool things like this and have all kinds of cool little animations that will go across there. And these are individually addressable LEDs, meaning that each one can be a different color. Now these last ones here are special. These are called FCOB LEDs, and it stands for Flexible Chip on Board. And basically what that means is it has a diffuser here, and there are a lot of little itty bitty LEDs, but they are very strong together. And if I go up to full brightness, these are really bright. So I'm going to use the FCOB lights and just put some light on all the stuff that I'm going to be working on. And for the RGBs, they'll be shining up so I can have a little cool light on whatever I'm displaying up there. Now the plywood shelves that I made had this nice cavity in between them for the mounting, and that allowed me to just put the electronics wherever I wanted. Obviously with a solid piece of wood, we do not have that cavity. So I need to make it. So before I start cutting into this back, I need to know how it's going to be attached to the wall. So I went into the office and I measured where the studs were, and then I transferred those locations onto the back here. So I'll know where those stud locations are, and then in between those is where I can make the little dig out for the electronics. So it looks like I'll have a nice little section right here at the end, and this is where I can put all of the electronics. To drill out this little area, I'm going to use a little auger bit, just like I used to drill the holes in my bench top. And I'm not real confident that I can cut straight holes, so I made a little jig for this little guy. I'm pretty proud of it, actually. I just kind of glued 2 pieces to this little scrap board right here, and then mounted this in the center, so I know that the holes will be right in the center. And then also it's going to kind of help me steady it, because it would be hard to balance this plate right onto here. All right, so let's hog some of this out and see how it works. Note to self, do not push this down when this little pole is right under the trigger, or you'll shriek like an elementary school kid. I'm not sure if this is my best idea or worst idea, but kind of feeling like it's my worst. Ooh, that looks pretty darn nice. I thought this might be an issue, and drilling through hard maple is no joke. I broke my little jig here, so I'm gonna have to kind of remake that. And also I had to beef up to this bigger drill here. So the first drill I was using is sitting in front of that fan right now because it was hotter than a $2 pistol. That thing could not take drilling through this maple. So if you're gonna be drilling 1-inch holes in maple or other woods, maybe don't use those bottom of the barrel drills like your Ryobi or even the cheapest DeWalt drill. Make sure you have something that's a bit more hefty. All right, I got that done, and do not worry, I have retained my title as world's second worst chiseler. Yeah. Anyway, I need to figure out where I'm going to put the LEDs so I can start running the next holes. I am a little bit concerned about how much I need to recess them on the shelf because they're going to be here on the front because I just don't want them just like shooting into my eyes like a million suns. So to test that out, I'm actually going to use this 2x12 that I was talking about. So instead of just cutting recesses in there, I'm going to get a little bit smarter and instead just put little strips on the outside to represent a recess. I've got the shelf mocked up, and in the center here I just have one little 1/4-inch strip. Then I added a little 1/8-inch strip on it to get to 3/8, and then 2 1/4-inch strips for a half over there. Don't ask me why I did them out of order. And then I'm going to put this up on the wall and then just see how each of them looks. All right, let's try 2 lights. So after looking at the mock-up, I think 3/8 of an inch is going to be just right, and it's because my wife agreed on it, and whatever she says is always right.
This one looks good.
Okay. Take that to heart, guys. Now all I gotta do is use my handheld router to route out the groove for 2 LED strips. That worked out fairly well. Now I have this little channel for the LED strips in the front. What I have to do now is get the wiring into this cavity. So the cavity is right here on the backside and I need to go through, but this cavity is only like 4 inches deep. So I'm going to get a smaller bit and drill down all the way into right underneath here. And then I'll drill another hole right here to connect those two. And sounds easy. Let's see if it works. I'm going to step it down and use this little smaller guy. The problem is that it's not quite long enough, but I do have this big extension. And so I think I'm going to start this with the jig so I can get it straight. Then I'll pull it off and plug this in and go the rest of the way. All right, what's going on here? Oh, the spring. The spring is bottoming out. Ah, jeez. Do this by hand. I'm thinking of starting a new band, but it's going to be called Idiots with Drills. So yeah, if you're interested in joining, you think you have the qualifications, just let me know down in the comments. We're open to everybody. All right, here we go. Oh gosh, that is just a hideous sound. That's the first single off of our LP. All right, with any luck, there should be a hole right underneath here. Hey, all right, that worked. On the back side of the shelf, I'm going to also be doing a groove, and that'll be for the RGB lights. And it's going to be pretty much exactly what I just did, so we're just going to blitz through it. I got the channel routed out, and I did one deeper pass in the middle, and then a wider one on the top. I have the LEDs down in the bottom channel, and then the plexi on top, so it'll be nice and flush. Now I just got to connect it down into the base. This will be much, much easier than the other side. There we go. Now all this is ready for wiring. All right, now we are at the pucker point of the project. That is the point where things start to pucker up. And that is because it is time to drill the holes in the wall as well as in the shelves here. I've gone back and forth between 2 different sizes of rod that I want to use for this. These are both steel rod. This one is a 1/2 inch and this is 5/8. I'm going to go with the 1/2, and that's just because it's going to be a lot easier and more accurate for me to drill the holes and make everything fit. And my initial idea was to go with the 5/8 rod because it's beefier and everybody likes beefier. And I was going to use this little guy, which is great for drilling vertical, but as you go horizontal, the weight of the drill and everything just makes it flex. And there is too much play for me to try to line up the holes in the wall as well as in the back of the shelf, especially if I'm doing 3 or 4 different holes. But I do have a tool that can be a lot more accurate that is 1/2 inch. So instead, I'm going to use this self-centering dowel jig, which has a 1/2 inch hole in it right here. And then I just went out and grabbed a 1/2 inch drill bit. It's nice and big, and I can just put it right in there. So I want to drill 2.5 inches into the stud, and taking into account the 1/2 inch drywall, that means 3 inches. Right before I started drilling, I had an idea. This thing is kind of heavy, and my arms are kind of weak. So what would be great is if I could have something to prop it up on. And I cut this little 2x4, and this is going to be perfect. Now that's one variable I don't have to worry about because I know the top of this cabinet is level because I built it. I went ahead and cut down the bars into little 11-inch pieces, and I put a little bevel there on the end to help it go in. Now we're going to see if it fits in the hole, and more importantly, if it's level. All right, number 1. Ooh, now let's see if we are square. Yes! Oh, that worked so nicely. All right, let's see if the rest of these are as nice as that one. All right, we can work with that. All right, I am so relieved that that went well. That was awesome. So I grabbed the shelf and I put it on top of the little rods, and then I was able to grab my carpenter square and mark out where each of them should go. So it translates to exactly where they're at on the wall. And I got that tip from Alexander Chappelle. He did it on one of his videos. Alexander, great tip. It worked very well. So I just laid out the little center mark, and now I can line that up with my self-centering jig, which is going to work out really nicely. And I also put a new piece of blue tape where I need to go to. So I'm going to be drilling quite a bit in here so it can have lots of support, and this shelf is going to be super strong. All right, the holes all look good. Let's go give it a test. Let's see how this goes. Come on, you can do it. Oh! Oh, that is stout too. Heck yes. All right, it looks like with just a little bit of help, this thing is gonna go in there just fine. So now I can do the chamfers, put some finish on this thing, get all the LEDs installed, and get a final reveal. I'm really digging the way that the bevel turned out on this, and it really makes it look nice and sleek. For the finish, I put a couple coats of Total Boat Halcyon Clear on there, and that'll be a nice protective finish, and it will match what we already have in the office. So now what I'm gonna do is just start installing the LEDs. So I modeled and 3D printed some of these little strips here, and these are for 10mm LEDs, and then I can just super glue them into the channel, and then the LEDs are gonna snap right in. And I will upload this to printables and have a link to it, so if you wanna print some out and use them for your own projects. So I'm gonna glue these in here, get the LEDs in, then flip it over, do the RGBs with the plexi, then we can get to install. Now my other floating shelves, I ran off battery, and although that was a cool idea and nice and novel, it was a pain in the butt to have to recharge the battery all the time. So I'm gonna be running power through the wall. I'm gonna use some in-wall cable, and then I'll have this little jobby here that the cable can come out. It'll be hidden behind the 3D printer, and then I can plug the things into a power strip. All right, with a hope and a prayer, this should go up and I can get everything plugged in. I did run 2 lines here, a 12 volt and a 5 volt line. So each of these will have their own dedicated power, and I can always change out the chargers and not have to mess with anything up there because this cable is just a patch cable that runs from the bottom up to the top. All right.
Oh, that's sturdy too.
All right, I pulled the 3D printers in here and put a few things on the shelf. Now let's check out the lights. First of all, the task lighting. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Tons of light here. I still have this bare wall, but it's gonna be a perfect spot to use some of these. Wait for the next video, you'll see what this is about. But let's check out the RGBs up top. This is great. It's just a nice little ambiance up there. I'll put some signage up there and it will look really cool. But I am super happy with how this turned out. It looks amazing and the office is really coming together. If you want to check out the other LED shelves I built, the video is right there. A big thank you to the FTBT Builders Club. Until next time, guys, get out there and build something awesome.